All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the second episode in my series where I talk about unfun heroes and heroes of the storm, or more correctly, probably allegedly unfun heroes and hero design in Heroes of the Storm, where I take a deep dive into it and talk all about it. So yeah, just to make that clear right at the start, I will agree with some things and not with others. Basically, anything that there's a community vibe that it's unfun, or if I think it's unfun personally, even if the community, even if it might not be there in the community, I think that makes it worthwhile to discuss. But I'll try to be, objective, give my take on it, give a few different takes on it, and yeah, start a discussion. Basically, I'm not guaranteed to come down and just say like everything I'm going to talk about is unfun. That's not what this is about, because there's some confusion about that in the first video. As you can already tell as well, this is going to be a podcasty type video. It's going to be long. It's going to be rambling. This is like all of my thoughts. I'm going to go in depth and pretty comprehensive as well. Today we're going to be talking about Overwatch heroes. So I'll talk about Overwatches in general. And then I'm going to talk about each individual hero that's been added to the game so far, to Heroes of the Storm. So yeah, I'm going to go pretty in depth. And that's the way I want to do it. If you like that kind of thing, you like the video. If you don't like it, you're not going to like it. Again, I feel like I need to address a few of these things because I got lots of comments about these things in the previous video. So just to make things clear from the start. Hooray! Okay. So yeah, this one's going to be about Overwatch heroes in Heroes of the Storm. Are they fun? Are they not? Let's dive into it and let's go. Oh, all right. First thing actually I want to talk about is what I think is really quite a stupid point, to be honest. And that should also give you an insight. I'm not going to hold back here. I'm not going to try sugarcoat anything. This is just going to be like kind of my raw, honest opinion. I might be right about some things. I might be wrong. I might be overly harsh. It's about starting a discussion and getting you guys thinking about the game and have it, just talk about it and yeah, maybe improve it as well through the discussion. That's the goal. But I do think that this point, I think this point's absolute rubbish. That comes up quite a bit, which is that Overwatch heroes shouldn't be in Heroes of the Storm at all. That is a separate game, and it should be a separate game. And what could it possibly be doing in a game like Heroes of the Storm? What nonsense. Oh, what are they doing? Blizzard, what are you like? Right, I just sit down and read this and I go, well, what is Heroes of the Storm? So it's a MOBA, sure. It's not exactly a MOBA because they've changed it a bit from some of the other MOBA rules, but MOBA's good enough. They call it, what is it, like a Heroes Brawl type thing. I can't remember exactly what Blizzard describes it as. They use a different term. But fundamentally, it's all the heroes from all of Blizzard's different franchises coming together into one game in this big, brawly, jukey out arena type thing. That's what it is. MOBA. Let's just call it a MOBA. I'll just call it a MOBA. It means the same thing, really. It's just all of their heroes from different franchises coming together in a big MOBA. That's what it is. It includes all their games. They're willing to put absolutely everything in, and that's fundamentally what it's been about from the very start. Right? It's, Arthas fighting Nova. Anything goes, right? It's just big duke it out. I mean, it used to be called Blizzard All-Stars. Now it's Heroes of the Storm. I mean, Storm, Blizzard, pretty similar. Heroes of the Blizzard doesn't sound as good, so we've got Heroes of the Storm. But yeah, of course, then Overwatch fits perfectly into that. That's exactly what it is. It's another huge Blizzard franchise. Sure, it's the newest one, but it's just a franchise all the same. And of course, then it has a spot in Heroes of the Storm because that's what it's about. It's about all the franchises coming together. So it's really that simple as far as I'm concerned. And I mean, I think the heroes translate over very well. I mean, there's an awful lot of MOBA elements incorporated into Overwatch in terms of, character identity and abilities and design and stuff like that, which kind of makes these characters a natural fit, I think, anyway. That's subjective, but that's what I think into Heroes of the Storm. I think they do translate over. They translate over well. Again, I'll talk about individual heroes and what's worked well and what hasn't, but just in terms of overall design, I think they're very distinct in their look and in their abilities, and they make sense in a MOBA. They're very similar to MOBA characters, really, the Overwatch one. So they, even from that perspective, they even fit in. And also from a financial perspective, of course, Overwatch is one of their biggest and most successful current games. Of course, they're going to incorporate into Heroes of the Storm. That's kind of the point. Kind of the point of this stuff is cross promotion, right? And getting you into the Blizzard launcher and keeping you there playing Blizzard games. That's what it's about. Of course, they're going to include Overwatch. They're going to have every Overwatch character in the game eventually. That's what's going to happen. So yeah, just that's just the way it's going to be. It just makes too much sense. They've obviously planned this, and it's what they're going to do, and it makes sense. In fact, I would actually, a bit of a tangent here, but I would actually say, I wish they would actually do more of this cross-promotion stuff. I really do wish they do more. I think it's something that they've left relatively untapped, and I do have a couple of worries about it, right? Because Blizzard don't release games, even expansion sets, all that often. No, they really don't. And I think, honestly, that promoting those through tie-ins with Heroes of the Storm, for example, or through, these promotional events, these fun events that they tend to run in these games, like unlock some loot boxes, play World of Warcraft, unlock loot boxes here, stuff like that. I think they should be doing that an awful lot more. But particularly around hero releases, I think it's something that they should be doing more of. So we had, for example, World of Warcraft Legion came out, and they didn't have a hero release actually tied into that. And I think that was a huge loss. I think it went wrong, because they did it once. They did it with StarCraft 2, Legacy of the Void, when they released Artanis as a tie-in, a direct tie-in. Artanis came out in Heroes of the Storm to tie in directly with Legacy of the Void. Now, it didn't work very well, right? I would say that Artanis, in his release state, was one of the worst designed heroes in the game. Not in terms of being anti-fun to play against, but rather just this clunky, unfun hero to play as. He really sucked, honestly. If you compare him to Artanis today, he's actually been, if you didn't play back then, he's been changed absolutely massively, really. A lot of I'd say the big gameplay decisions that you're making nowadays as Artanis simply didn't exist back then. So, that little dash you've got on your W, your twin blades, didn't exist. He'd Zealot charge at level 16, but that came right at the end of the game, really. So you just had no mobility on that at the start. Your Phase Prism, the thing you throw out that swaps people's places, that traveled about half the speed, so you could basically only hit people in melee range with it. And then you couldn't actually cast Phase Prism during Blade Dash. So all those decisions... Oh, also, his shields were more powerful, self-shielding, but they only happened when you were below 50% HP. So basically he was this big, chunky, ironically super immobile hero that just had loads of shields, right? Because you could do this big blade dash, but you couldn't swap anyone, so you just arrive right back where you started after doing this big swoopy dash thing. It was pretty dumb, I thought, anyway, compared to Artanis now, who, you've got this little dash on your W, you're looking for these swaps, and you've got that sort of zealot fantasy of, you swap into the enemy team and then you're kind of jumping around them with your twin blades. You throw in your heroics to help, and you kind of have that dive in and just go ham kind of thing. So yeah, that just wasn't there when Artanis first came out. It was a disaster. I suspect that they kind of rushed the hero design to sync up Artanis coming to Heroes of the Storm and coming to Legacy of the Void. I think that's what I suspect. No confirmation on this. I suspect they rushed it, and they obviously don't need to rush it because they should have these game dates planned way in advance, right? Way in advance amongst Blizzard. Just, with good communication between teams, I think they could prepare heroes for, again, these really very unusual, it's very unusual that they release a game or an X-Pack. WoW, for example. We're going to have a new X-Pack for WoW next year. I think they should have a hero that ties into that. Maybe Anduin, I don't know. But they know it's coming out way in advance. So they should have that hero designed and prepared. I think it makes so much sense. But yeah, anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. But yeah, Artanis went wrong, man. He went wrong. And I'm worried that might put them off doing this in future. And they really should be doing more of this. Hang on a second. Winston, stop eating the mat. Bad dog. Bad dog. I might have to go and grab him a toy. He's eating the mat. Yeah, also Artanis, quite a boring character, compared to, Kerrigan from the Zerg or Raynor from the Terrans, he's pretty boring. He's pretty bland. Bland Tanis. Zeratul was the most interesting Protoss character by a long shot, and he died. Spoiler alert. Very early on in the third game. Was it the third game? I think it was. StarCraft. The third StarCraft expansion. Anyway, that's a bit of a side note. So yeah, in terms of should they include Overwatch heroes in Heroes of the Storm? Absolutely, they should. It makes so much sense from every perspective, and they should keep going with the Overwatch maps, honestly, and they should probably include every single Overwatch hero. That's just what they should do. Simple as that. Let's talk about the... actually, before I talk about the individual heroes, we've got this... and this is why I need to talk about individual heroes, is we have this objection that, Overwatch heroes are all super mobile and shoot while moving. Overwatch heroes are the worst. Again, complete nonsense, right? Let's look at the Overwatch heroes. First of all, we've got Ana, we've got Zarya. They've got absolutely no mobility, right? So it's not an Overwatch thing that they've got mobility. Yes, there's actually, if we look at, there's 6 Overwatch heroes in the game right now. So obviously, yes, Genji, Lucio, and Tracer, very mobile. But then you've got Ana and Zarya, incredibly immobile. And then you've got D.Va, who is arguably very mobile, arguably not. I mean, that one's more up for debate. She's got bad cross-map mobility. She's got a boost with her boosters. Boosts with her boosters. But, I mean, her basic attack, she can shoot while moving, but she's slower. It's really fairly comparable, honestly, to, you know, any other tank or, you know, warrior hero with a melee attack just stutter stepping. It's really, you know, not much. I'd actually argue that D.Va's not especially mobile. So that one's debatable, though. I'll give you that one. So you've got 3 that are definitely super mobile. You've got 2 that are definitely super immobile. Then you've got D.Va, 1 who's debatable. So, I mean, it's not close to all Overwatch heroes all being super mobile. Not close to it. So, yeah, I think, again, that's a silly objection to Overwatch heroes just in general. Let's talk about them individually then. I'll just mention Ana first, then we're going to talk about Genji, because I know Genji is one of the most controversial, and he's been pretty recent as well. But Ana was just added. Junkrat's going to be coming out soon, but I don't know what Junkrat's going to be like. I'm recording that before I've got any real info on that. But yeah, so Ana's been the last one added. Let's talk about her. And again, to reiterate, when I'm coming at things in terms of anti-fun, what do I mean? Anti-fun to play against. What's an anti-fun here to play against? I think it comes in sort of 2 aspects, and it's very bad if you don't have either of these. You want the ability to counterplay an enemy hero, either through preparation, that you can prepare for what they're about to do, and therefore set yourself up in a good spot to counteract it. And then number 2 is that you've got kind of reaction. Which is that, you know, once they do their attack, that you've got a good way to deal with it. And again, an example I gave of, I think, an ability which works really well at this is Mosh Pit, which is obviously super impactful, but you can both prepare and react to it. You can prepare by staying spread out. You know, you clump up and get hit by a Mosh Pit. You can instantly go, oh, guys, we screwed up. We all grouped up and ETC slid in. Obviously, that's, you know, we can't do that. We can prepare for this so much better. We need to move into this team fight with better positioning. Right, so you got that preparation, and then you can react to it as well. Of course, you got the opportunity to like cleanse people out of the stun. You can interrupt the mosh pit with a number of abilities. I think there's plenty of room for counterplay there to mosh pit. I think it works really well because, again, I think it's a great example because it's such a massively impactful ability. Like, it can single-handedly win games, but you don't feel like totally helpless against it because you know that there's ways to counterplay it, both in terms of preparing for it and then dealing with it when it actually happens. And I think that's good gameplay, for example. Anti-fun is gameplay where you've no way to prepare for it at all. And then even when it happens, you can't really react to it. The example I gave last time is these Tyrande Owls, which you can't really see coming, and they hit you really hard. And it's just a pain in the butt, basically. Again, that was somewhat controversial, apparently. But that's what I felt. This is the example I'll give. There might be other examples. That's the only one I can think of right now off the top of my head. Anyway, let's dive into the Overwatch. So Ana, I'm pretty fine with Ana at the moment, to be honest with you. I don't see any major issues with Ana. However, I will say that Ana is still in her infancy. I know she's like this grandma character, right? But she's kind of in her infancy in terms of gameplay and heroes. She's been added super recently. She's a very difficult hero to play that is very much dependent on working with the team and coordinating with the team. Probably works only with certain team comps, and I think that stuff hasn't really been discovered yet at all. So it is possible that it will emerge that Ana, in combination with certain other heroes, is immensely annoying and anti-fun to play against. As far as I'm aware, I'm not aware of any of them as of yet. And she seems fine to me. You know, I just see there's a lot of counterplay inherently to Ana. Again, she's super immobile. She's got very limited ability to actually heal herself. Her abilities are, her heal and her sleep dart are both very difficult to hit skill shots. Even her grenade's a bit difficult to hit as a skill shot. I think that opens up a lot of counterplay to the Ana. She's obviously extremely vulnerable to dive. And yeah, for that reason, like I'm not seeing her yet as a huge problem at all because she's got those very big vulnerabilities. But like I said, perhaps if it emerges that, she combos super well. For example, one of the combos I have to talk about in this video is Tracer Tassadar, which is just awful to play against. It's just awful. Like, but perhaps there will be some sort of combo with Ana, but I'm not aware of one yet. So that's kind of what I have to say about her. But yeah, just looking at her in terms of her kit, she's a very powerful hero, but she's very difficult to play. And I think there is counterplay because she's got very clear weaknesses as well. Let's talk about Genji. So Genji is one of the most controversial ones. He came out recently and he's received an awful amount of hate. And I actually, again, I want to kind of dive into this and try to work it out with you guys, because I never had that sort of hate for Genji that a lot of people had. It just never got to me at all. And I kind of want to explain sort of why, and at least put a few of my theories as to why people do hate Genji, and then why, for me, I haven't run into some of those issues. All right, so I mean, right at the start as well, it's also very worth mentioning that there can be, and I think with Genji it's very clear that there is at the moment a very large disconnect in terms of perception, in terms of what the community perceives as being effective and what actually is effective. Because at the moment, in fact, let me check it out for you live, like right now. Genji is extremely popular. I'll get you the exact figures, but he's one of the most popular heroes in the game, but he's an absolutely abysmal win rate. Let me see if I can find him. Okay, so he's not super... let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8... Okay, he's only the 18th most popular hero overall in the game right now. 18th most popular overall. But, I mean, out of, what is it, like 60, 70 heroes? He's pretty damn popular at the moment, and that's across all leagues, all skill levels. However, even despite that, he's in 30% of the games, just overall, ranked games, that is. And he's got a 43% win rate, which is absolutely awful. Looking at all heroes that are more popular than him, the next lowest, we got Dahaka, who's got 46. Then there's a few of them around like 49. Then most of them are kind of around 50-ish. But he's by far basically the lowest win rate, high popularity hero in the game. Let's see. Li Ming is 45%. She's a little bit less popular. She's about 20-something most popular hero overall. Just looking at the stats on Hotslugs here. And she's at 45% win rate at the moment. So she's another hero. And I think they got a lot of stuff in common. Both of them. I think both Genji and Li Ming. And I've said this many times. When they succeed, they're extremely flashy, and when they succeed, like it's explosive, it's spectacular. When they start getting their resets, when they start killing your whole team, it's super dramatic. But the question is, just how often does this happen? And is it actually good? Is it actually effective? I think that's kind of the thing with Genji at the moment. People are apparently in Hero League game where they're picking to win, one assumes. They're obviously picking him all the time. He's super popular, yet he has an absolutely abysmal win rate compared to the other heroes. So I think, this, when I'm talking about fun or anti-fun, I'm not actually talking directly about, how powerful a hero is. Like, for example, that was something people were raising with the Tyrande thing. They're saying, well, the owl build is not necessarily that powerful. In fact, I'd say it's pretty good, actually. The owl build is pretty damn good. But it's not the power level of the owl build necessarily. That's the issue. It's just more the design of it. So I'm not saying that with Genji. His design might be bad. I'm going to talk about that. But certainly there is this disconnect that you have to take on board, which is that he's extremely popular. People seem to think he's very powerful when in fact he's not. Or the reasons that they think, or the things that they think make him powerful, are not the ones that do. And that's why you've got people consistently picking this hero and consistently losing on this hero. There's some disconnect in terms of understanding there, which I think is important just to know moving into it. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that he is fun or anti-fun either way, but that is something that you have to bear in mind going through this. Another thing that kind of struck me, and this has two big ramifications, I think. So I sat down, and of course I said, well, anti-fun is stuff you can counter. So I sat down and I said to myself, Nubkeks, how would you counter Genji? What would be the big counters that you bring out for Genji, right? And the two heroes that immediately came to my mind that I've run against Genji before, and that I've found super successful when other people ran them as well against Genji from my Hero League experience, the two that sprang to mind were Malfurion and Uther as being exceptionally good counter picks to Genji. Why? Because Genji dives in on your team. Malfurion pops Twilight Dream. Malfurion and Uther both have extremely powerful CC. Malf is this massive, long AoE silence. Uther, obviously, he's got a melee range stun, and he's got Divine Storm as well, which is a short range stun. So both of these supports have these short range stuns. The difficulty really in using them is getting in the right position. But that they work super well against Genji, right? Genji dives into your team, pulls out his Dragon Blades, like, I'm going to kill you all. Boof, Malf silence. Genji takes a big chunk of damage. Can't use any mobility, can't use protected, can't dash out for several seconds. You kill the Genji. Also, Malf can follow up with the root in the Genji, seeing as Genji can't really jump out or anything. Same thing with Uther. Genji jumps in. Uther stun locks him with what's it? Divine Judgment? Is it Judgment? I think it's called Judgment. And Divine Storm. And Genji gets killed. Uther obviously adds a bit of damage as well. They both add a little bit of damage to Genji. Also, part of this too is the fact that, how do you stop Genji being CC'd when he jumps into your team? Well, that's where the Divine Shield from Uther plus Genji Dragon Blade combo came from, which was exceptionally powerful, still is very powerful, which is you Divine Shield the Genji, so Genji's in the middle of the enemy team, chopping them up, and they can't counterplay it. That's the purpose of that. So, picking Uther as a counter to Genji, not only does he work pretty well against Genji, but it also removes it as something that you can combo with it. So those are the two that sprung to my mind as being, that they're the first two that I thought of, at least, of being very effective against Genji. And this had two very important things. Number one, that come from this fact is that they're both support heroes, right? They're both support heroes. So number one, I said, well, support hero is probably the least popular. I don't have evidence for this, but it's probably the least popular role. This is anecdotal. Least popular role in the game. From my experience, it's the role that people want to play the least, probably that people appreciate the least as well in some respects. So yeah, I think the fact that in my opinion, perhaps the two counters that spring to mind are both support heroes, which are relatively unpopular, means that it's not like he gets countered by some other super flashy assassin, right? That people love playing. So hey, it doesn't matter. They pick Genji. Well, hey, great, I get to play, I don't know, Falufi, the double Blade Master, I don't know, something cool like that. Whatever the cool kids like, the Blade Master Demon Hunter thing, whatever. Illidan and Samuro combine into one cybernetic mechanical, I don't know, doesn't matter. But yeah, like that's not the case. They're support heroes, which aren't super flashy. So perhaps there is some sort of problem there where, well, that removes some of the countering and people feel they can't counter it because they don't personally play support, they don't want to play the support, or they don't have that appreciation for what the support can do, or they're not cool with playing around their support. If they're playing a different role, they're not cool with relying on the support to keep them alive. So that could be an issue. This could also be an issue. In fact, there's three ramifications here. This could also be an issue in lower ranked leagues, where there won't be that sort of level of coordination and cooperation. So the support won't be protecting you as well, and you won't be relying on the support as much. So you do get picked off more because you're playing solo. And then the third big thing, of course, is quick match, which I don't really play. But obviously in quick match, there's in ranked, you're nearly always going to have a support. You ought to, really. But in quick match, of course, there's no such guarantee. So you could easily have 5 assassins versus 5 assassins quite commonly in quick match. So perhaps in that situation, again, if the biggest counters to Genji are supports, if there's no supports in the game, well, that's some of the biggest counters this hero removed. So that's extremely annoying. So that was one thing that really struck me about Genji. The other thing, obviously, he's very mobile as well, which people can find annoying because he can jump on you. Again, one of the things I think actually, though, tying into this, that I think that they designed really well with Genji was actually his deflectability. I thought they did a really good job with this. I think it's designed fantastically. Because what this does, it gives you protected for a short amount of time. Every time you attack Genji while this is on, he'll throw out a kunai, do a little bit of damage. So there's a little bit of punishment there. Like, you don't really want to attack Genji during this period because it gives him some extra damage. However, it's not necessarily a huge deal if you hit him. Like, if you hit him a couple of times, if you hit him now and then by mistake, whatever, it's not a massive deal. It's just a bit of damage. But there is that, there's a reward to Genji if he times it well and reflects stuff. But there's a bit of a punishment to you if you hit it, but you don't. if you do hit it and he reflects and does throw some kunai at you, there's punishment there, but it's not overwhelming. So I think it's a nice little bit of gameplay in that sense without being overwhelming. I'm going to talk about Zarya and how I think compare it in that sense to Zarya shields, and I think Zarya shields are actually much worse. Yeah, so I think that's cool. Also, the fact that it gives you protected, it's a short window as well with a very long cooldown. So I think that's good too. It's not, again, overwhelming. It's up very little. Genji really does have to time it very well. And then I think one of the very important things is that crowd control cancels it. Whereas, let's say, Varian protected shield from his parry, which I also think is bad design, which I'll talk about in another video. That one, you stun Varian and he's still protected. Whereas with Genji, if you stun him, you silence him, whatever, it knocks that protected shield off him. So he's actually very vulnerable. So you can I just want you to imagine like what it would be like if CC didn't interrupt deflect. It would make it a much different dynamic where Genji could dive your team. You CC him. Oh, well, he's still protected. Sorry, guys. He's still protected. The stun wears off Genji. You can continue doing what he was doing. Whereas now you do have counterplay, I think. When Genji jumps in, you can CC him, you can lock him down and blow him up because he is squishy, and CC does interrupt his shield. Stops him using his shield, and the shield doesn't last that long anyway. So I think that does leave good opportunity for counterplay in terms of Genji. Also worth noting that, again, part perhaps of the issues that what's one of Genji's weaknesses, of course, is that his wave clear is very bad. He's very good at ganking. He's good at these sort of explosive team fights, but he's vulnerable to being killed. And his wave clear is really bad. He's very good at rotating around the map and ganking, but his wave clear is terrible, which is obviously something that you will normally your assassins handle. Let's say Vala, for example, relative somewhat similar role, ranged assassin. Genji kind of straddles a bit of a melee assassin role, though, in terms of his gameplay. But, Vala brings tons of wave clear. That's Gul'dan brings tons of wave clear. Jaina does, Kel'Thuz. A lot of these, oftentimes you want your ranged assassins to bring decent wave clear because that's very important in the game. Genji lacks that, so that gives you room for counterplay there. So, yeah, I think those things add up to why I never found Genji that frustrating, because I felt like there were heroes to counterplay him. I feel like he's got very big weaknesses in terms of wave clear, but that the heroes that do counter him tend to be support heroes, maybe even tank heroes to a certain extent. I thought that his shield is well designed in terms of it has, it can be used well, but it's also got a lot of drawbacks and also has a lot of counterplay to it. So yeah, I think those things add up, and I think you can look at that and go like, okay, actually, yeah, even in terms of the things because I was looking at it, trying to work out what's going on, I said, all right, actually, when you compare it, the stuff like, again, support heroes countering him, well, that might not be there in quick match. Or again, I can see how people wouldn't really, that might not be enough for a lot of people. It wouldn't be relevant to the way that a lot of people play the game. Or again, playing around having superior wave clear, that Genji lacks wave clear. Again, that's not going to be particularly relevant to how a lot of people play the game. Quick match, different from ranked, of course, that's going to be very different too. So it does make it difficult for me to understand how people look at Genji. Because from my perspective, in terms of the way Heroes of the Storm plays out for me, I really don't see him as a big issue. I actually think he works pretty well, but I can kind of look at it and understand how the things that I think add up to make him work well might not be there in other circumstances. Where if you're playing like this game with all assassins and it's like just this sort of random brawl with just it's kind of this random deathmatch with no real purpose in terms of moving forwards and winning the game and playing the map and, working together. That Genji could be much more annoying because, he's just rotating around. He jumps on you. You can't really get away. You can't really prepare. He just dashes in from off the side of the lane up in your face, and he starts bursting you down and killing you, and he's got the shield. You're isolated and you get killed. I could imagine that being somewhat frustrating. But I'm not sure. I do find it difficult to get my head around that sort of aspect of it and whether or not that makes him super annoying. And again, to reiterate, in terms of effectiveness, that when I gave you that stat that he's this currently, as of the time of recording, literally the time of recording, he's got a 43% win rate. That's across all skill levels. That's not just high level play, that's all skill levels. So, it's not like he's super crazy high win rate in lower leagues, but not in high leagues. In fact, quite the opposite. Also worth noting that Genji, I think, is fairly difficult to play. So that's something too. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm curious to hear what you guys, what your thoughts on that are. But for me, I actually don't I actually don't have a big issue with Genji. I will say, I did think his dodge talent, obviously level 7, was totally overpowered, but they've nerfed that down massively since. But yeah, that was kind of a pain. And I actually think that does have some annoying stuff, because for example, I do like playing heroes like Malthael and Lunara a lot. Heroes with these on-hit poison effects, that can be very, it can feel really dumb, particularly Malthael playing against Genji. That can feel very dumb, because, your Malthael fighting against Genji, if you can hit, let's say you miss your E ability, then suddenly you're sat there as Malthael, and Genji dodges your basic attacks, so you can't hit him with a basic attack, which means you can't apply Reaper's Mark, which means you can't even use your other abilities, because you can only use them on people with Reaper's Mark. That can feel pretty dumb, I think, in terms of game design. Just this pure dodge mechanic. I probably prefer if it was some sort of block mechanic that reduced the damage just for those particular interactions, but that's like a small quibble on my part. But yeah, certainly I definitely found, like, when I played Malthael against Genji, I was like, oh, well, this is just stupid. Like, as this was back when dodge was 5-second cooldown, can have 3 charges. I was like, well, this hero is super annoying. He jumps in on me, and I can't even use my abilities against him, because I can't hit it. Like, I can't hit him with a basic attack. He can just stand in my face and attack me, and I'm literally like, none of my abilities even work. I can't even press the buttons because he doesn't have Reaper's Mark. I thought that was dumb. But anyway, yeah, let's move on. That's enough. But you can talk more about Genji in the comments, and then I'll do a video replying to your comments as well. Okay. Lucio, there's one. I think Lucio, I actually think they did a great job at Lucio. I think Lucio translated really well. Again, in terms of counterplay, so he's super mobile as well. You can attack while moving. I don't think it's a big issue, though, because he doesn't do much damage when he attacks, so it doesn't feel that bad. His damage output is really quite low, so it doesn't really feel that bad. And he does have obvious weaknesses as well, so he only has AoE healing, he's got no single target healing, no cleanse, so while he can heal up his whole team, he can't heal up individual people, so you've already got counterplay in that. And one of the nice things, I think, actually, is that while he is super mobile and can move quicker than other heroes in the fight, it's got very clear limitations to it, which is that he has to be attached to a wall, be sliding along a wall to get that movement speed bonus, or he hops off the wall. It persists for a little while, but it's all about moving around walls. So although he's moving very quickly, you do have kind of an idea of where he's going to go. And then on top of that as well, it's the fact that he's got his heal is in this aura around him. So you can already predict as well then where he wants to position, because he wants to position in such a way that he's giving that aura to his teammates. So that even though this guy is moving around very quickly, he's hard to hit, you still have a pretty good idea. Like, you've got a lot of opportunity to work out where he's going to go, because, he wants to stick towards a wall. He wants to stick near his teammates. So that's okay. Also, there's the very long cast time on sound barrier. So I thought that was nice as well. There's room for counterplay there. So yeah, I actually think they did a really good job at Lucio. Obviously, there's been little balance tweaks here and there to try to get him in the right spot. He was maybe a bit too strong, then he's quite underpowered. He's coming into a good spot now again. But I think he does work really well. I think it's actually quite nice. You've got the sort of gameplay things right there. I think, for example, if he hit like 50% harder than he did now, I could see him being extremely annoying to play against. But the fact that his basic attacks really don't do much damage at all makes it's not too bad. And you do have ways to punish him and to play around the fact that he is very, very mobile, especially for a support hero. He also has got terrible wave clear as well. So yeah, I actually think they did a really good job at Lucio. I think Lucio is designed really well, with fun gameplay for Lucio, and reasonable ways to play against him as well, with, again, very, very clear weaknesses. So I personally don't see any issue with Lucio at all, or his mobility. I actually think that they did a great job, and that's so well done to Blizzard, in my opinion. I'm going to mention D.Va quickly, and then I'm going to come to the two Overwatch heroes that I personally think are much more problematic, which are Zarya and Tracer especially. So D.Va again, I also don't think is that bad. Like I mentioned near the start, yes, she can move while shooting, however, she gets slowed down. It's very short range. Honestly, it's very comparable to simply, Garrosh just stutter stepping with his basic attacks. Like, that's just it. Honestly, it's more of an aesthetic thing than anything. It really doesn't change up her gameplay that much. She's got her boosters, but that's fine. I don't really see a big issue to D.Va. Really, I really don't see a big issue to the D.Va. The big, her mech explosion thing. There's so much room for counterplay there because it builds up for ages. I personally have never had an issue with her. I've not seen that many people complain about D.Va either. I'm curious, maybe discuss this more in the follow-up video when I respond to your comments, if people have things to say about D.Va, but I don't actually see an issue. Like I said, I think you could describe her as being a very mobile hero, but I think that's a mistake. She's also, like I said, she's very slow at moving across the map because she's got no mount. Basic attack while moving with her, again, I don't think it's a big deal. It doesn't hit that hard. It's very comparable to just a melee hero stutter stepping. Her damage reduction fields that she can project, again, that's very predictable. It's very limited in terms of where it is, so I think it can be effective, but there's maybe even too much room for counterplay. No, you know what, that could be annoying if there wasn't enough room, but that's very counterable. I don't think that's a huge issue at all. The mech explosion, plenty of room there to counter it. I think D.Va's just fine. I don't see an issue, so I'll come back to this. I don't have much to say about her, so I'll come back to that in the next video if you guys do. Let's talk about Tracer and Zarya. These are the ones that I think have problems. I'll talk about Zarya first. So the problem I find with Zarya is particularly with Zarya's early game. And to give you a comparison, the issue I have is that when you damage Zarya's shields, it gives her energy, and that's fundamental to her hero. They can't change that. That's fundamentally how Zarya works. But the issue I have with it is that it can be extremely frustrating, particularly when you're on a support or a tank role, and your damage dealer in early, let's imagine you're in a 4 versus 4 lane on Brax's holdout. This is the classic example, and your damage dealer, your Vala, let's say, keeps shooting basic attacks into Zarya shields, and she just can't seem to manage to not shoot that Zarya shield. That is an extremely frustrating experience, because by her misplaying, not only are you at the natural disadvantage of she's not playing it that well, but she's actually making the Zarya as a whole, giving her lots of energy, makes her extremely strong, and then your ability to counterplay the Zarya gets much more limited. It's like you're getting punished twice in a way. I think it's a good comparison to like another MOBA game like League of Legends, for example, where it's renowned as being much more toxic than Heroes of the Storm. Why is that? Well, it's because in that game, heroes have individual experience and they earn gold from doing stuff, basically, which again increases their power level massively. So for example, in that game, let's say you're in the middle lane, and in the top lane, you're the solo lane, right? If your solo laner dies 5 times in a row, people rage super hard. Why? Because then when the enemy team solo laner comes down, he's got a whole bunch of extra levels, a whole bunch of extra gold, which is like a whole bunch of extra talents, basically. So he's much more powerful. So because your teammate played badly, suddenly the enemy team member that was against him is super overpowered, and then your ability to play well against him is massively crippled. It's just you don't really stand a chance against this guy either. Why? Not because of anything you did, but simply because your teammate fed him, and now he's super overpowered. It's sort of same sort of situation with Zarya, actually. I think same situation with Zarya. Your teammate keeps hitting her shield, and then you get punished for it because that Zarya is now doing insane damage. Like, we've all had those games where Zarya is way top of the damage meters. And it's just like this unstoppable Zarya pushing down the lanes because, the damage dealers just can't help but hit those shields. I think that makes for a very unfun experience when, you're sitting on the support or one of the other damage dealers. Like, if you're the second damage dealer and you're like, I'm not hitting the Zarya shields at all, can you please stop hitting those shields? And then your teammate keeps hitting the shields. And then it's like, oh, well, now there's nothing we can do in lane, really. The enemy team has this overpowered hero that's just wrecking us. I think that can be quite a bad experience. And like I said, it gives you that feeling of being punished twice by a teammate's misplay, which is no fun whatsoever. The problem is really that there's not much they can do, as far as I can tell, because just Zarya doing more damage, getting energy and doing more damage based off her shields is just fundamentally what she does. So I think the only way they can deal with it, and what they have been doing it's just merely a question of tuning, I think. It's just tweak the damage numbers like here and there, to put her in a good spot where it feels okay. But I think fundamentally she's always going to be kind of an annoying hero to play against from that respect, because of that. Now, I will say it doesn't feel half as bad later in the game. It doesn't feel anywhere near as bad later in the game for whatever reason, however the scaling works or whatever. I suppose you have the opportunity to do more damage, so you can do things like, whereas early in the game, you don't really, like level 1 to 5, you don't really go, we'll just smash the Zarya shield and kill her. Whereas when you're level 20, that can become a very real option. You go, Zarya's like far up, let's just kill her. She'll pop her shield, she'll do lots of damage, but we'll kill her pretty quickly. You have that option, which you don't have early in the game. So I do find myself, I think it is a fairly early game annoyance against the Zarya, and she can also walk into turrets and get energy. But I think it is just a tuning thing. I don't think there's any way around it. It is worth noting, of course, that Zarya does have quite a few quest talents, which is one way of combating it in quite a fun way for everyone involved. Instead of giving her like different amounts of scaling built into her base abilities, which Blizzard typically, very, very rarely does Blizzard do that. They like to have it just 4% more damage and HP every level. That's what they like to do. Very rarely. Kel'Thuzad has a slightly different one because of his trait. But they do that very rarely. So I think questing is a nice way to do it, which obviously gives you more late game power while being weaker early game because you're doing the quest. But it makes it a fun way to do it because you don't feel like you're being punished or just being arbitrarily weaker early game. It's kind of smoke and mirrors disguised as being more fun because I got to complete my quests, and there's opportunity to complete it quicker if you play it well. So I think that works nice. It's not so that makes it more than smoke and mirrors. It's like a real thing that rewards skill. So I think that's good. But yeah, that's kind of what I think about Zarya. But I do see her as being just in terms of her design, a fundamentally frustrating hero to play against. And that Blizzard just has to deal with very precise tuning. That's kind of what I think about that. Tracer. For me, I think Tracer is arguably the most problematic Overwatch hero by a big margin. So first things first. Probably the worst thing about Tracer is the Tracer Tassadar combo, which has been a nightmare for Blizzard to try to balance. Just the Tassadar hero in general even has been a nightmare for Blizzard to try to balance. He's received repeated large reworks to how his abilities work. As far as I remember when they changed him to be more of a support, and they kept nerfing him. His level 1 talent tier has been reworked several times, all that sort of stuff. How his shields work have been changed a lot, especially. They just can't seem to get this guy right because there's so much opportunity for anti-fun and frustration. But yeah, so Tracer is incredibly mobile. And I think there is a difference between Tracer mobility and Genji mobility in that the Genji's mobility is much more predictable. Right, it's much more predictable where Genji is going to go is much more straightforward than where Tracer's going to go. Number one, okay, so Genji's got this really long dash, sure. But once he's used that dash, he's got mobility with Dragon Blade, but that's very predictable. He's got his jump. It's on a relatively longish cooldown as well, though. And Genji kind of wants to be up close to get the maximum value out of his Shuriken or again out of Dragon Blade. So I think there is, it's somewhat predictable where Genji's going to go, even though he is still very mobile. Tracer, on the other hand, she goes anywhere really, and she's got this dash which is very fast on a very short cooldown. So she's always zipping all over the place. On top of that, in comparison as well, Tracer brings extremely high single target DPS. The damage that her basic attack puts out is just in terms of raw DPS, it's one of the highest in the entire game. It does an awful lot of damage. Then she can obviously dash in, throw a pulse bomb on you, melee you, and teleport out. So Tracer's got a lot of damage and a lot of mobility built in. A lot of single target damage and mobility, which can be very frustrating because, no, let me start again. This is not the way I want to address the Tracer thing. Because I think there's so many things here, it's hard to know where to start. All right, let me put it like this. Well, I think one of the big problems with Tracer, and in fact, one area, here we go, that doesn't translate across well from Overwatch is that, and this also ties into the Tassadar thing, how does Tracer work in Overwatch? Well, yeah, she's very mobile, but she's very squishy. So that's like her big weakness, is that she's hard to hit, but when you do hit her, it counts for more. So you kind of have that trade-off. Difficult to hit, but when you hit her, it hits for more because of how squishy she is. There's also, and importantly, in Overwatch, basically all of your attacks are skill shots. And then they can design Tracer around that, right? Because in Overwatch, it's all shooting guns, really. I'm not 100% familiar with all the abilities, but for the most part, it's all skill shots. Pretty sure 99% of it is skill shots, I think. So, a Tracer who's very mobile is good at dodging skill shots. Well, that kind of ties into the game because it's all skill shots. So, they can balance that a little bit more and then the reward. But when you translate Tracer over to Heroes of the Storm, where that massive mobility, those really short cooldown, quick dashes, make her very hard to hit by skill shots. Well, not every ability in Heroes is a skill shot. In fact, far from it. We have lots of skill shots, but then we also got a fair few heroes with point and click abilities. And that just leads to this inherent imbalance, this inherent problem with Tracer, where the way to counter her really is to play heroes with point and click abilities. Those feel very effective against Tracer, whereas heroes with skill shots can often feel utterly helpless. And I think that is a problem. That's where some of that design doesn't carry over very well. Just the amount of mobility she has. It works all right in Overwatch because it's all skill shot based. So that interaction, the fact that she's good at dodging skill shots kind of makes sense, and they can design it in a little bit better. Whereas in Heroes of the Storm, not everything is a skill shot, and that adds a layer of difficulty in terms of playing against her, because suddenly you got this hero that's good against your skill shots, but point and click really good against her. So for example, Taunt Varian is a classic example of a hero that's good against Tracer, because you've got, point and click charge, point and click taunt, lock her down, and then you can follow up CC and follow up damage on her. That's a classic example of a hero that is good against Tracer. Greymane is another example because he's got a lot of point and click burst damage. You E onto her. You can hit her with basic attack maybe. You can hit her with a Q and then go for the throat, which is a point and click burst heroic. That stuff is good against Tracer as well. So yeah, I think that is a fundamental issue with the hero. Just in terms of the translation across the Heroes of the Storm, I think that is a problem. Also, then on top of it, the other big issue as well is, again, comparing her to Overwatch, right? Because in Overwatch, it's a different dynamic in terms of flanking and where your supports are, and you've got health packs, which are a much bigger thing. So, for example, in Overwatch, you might have that gameplay dynamic where Tracer is kind of flanking around your team, trying to pick off people that are kind of isolated, but she's not really in a position to fight the big team as a whole. She gets damaged, she has to run off, pick up a health pack, and you got sort of gameplay around that. She's far away from her supports. That doesn't really hold true as much in Heroes of the Storm at all, really, because it's quite easy for her to get back to a support hero and get healed up. So that can be a bit of an annoyance. Also then, the Tassadar thing, tying into this as well, is you think about that what I said with Tracer, right? She's difficult to hit, but when you do hit her, she's very squishy. So you have that reward that, you hit her, it's worth a lot. This is where Tassadar becomes super problematic, because the Tassadar shield on Tracer, it really solves all the problems, right? Because it gives her more maximum HP, basically. It's this big shield on top of her, more maximum HP. So suddenly this hero that was very squishy isn't squishy anymore. And that's a big problem, because she's not squishy anymore. On top of that, it also gives you a lot of leech, which is healing off your basic attacks. She does a lot of damage with basic attacks, so it heals her up very effectively. So suddenly it becomes super annoying, this Tassadar Tracer combo, because you got this shielded hero who's just zipping in around your team. They're very difficult to hit, and then they've got this big shield. If you do hit them, she recalls out, and then she comes right back in with another Tassadar shield. You got her to half-life when you stunned her that time. Well, don't worry, she's got a Tassadar shield, so she's not really at half-life anymore. That shield is protecting her. She's also got life leech from this shield, so she's going to heal it up pretty quickly. That stuff I think that does become very frustrating very quickly. But for me, so that is definitely a big issue with just Tassadar Tracer in general. That's very annoying. But yeah, I think the fundamental issue, with Tracer is just that it's that carryover, that sort of trade-off of she's difficult to hit, but when you do hit her, there's the reward. But then it comes down to the fact that not everything is a skill shot in Heroes of the Storm. So that there's this inherent imbalance in terms of what your hero can do. You can feel totally helpless on a very skill shot dependent hero. Let's say, for example, for most Li Ming players, for example, Tracer just absolutely wrecks you because you can't hit her with your skill shots. You can hit her with like Calamity, but you can't hit her with the other stuff. Now, a very skillful Li Ming player, I'm talking probably Grandmaster standard, could do things like hit her with Wave of Force and knock her into your abilities, like your orb and your missiles, but that's a very skillful thing to do. That's not really representative of most play at all. So that's one example of a hero that you're just like, this Tracer's on me and there's nothing I can do. I do think that's a big problem. And I would also contrast it with the Genji as well, just to reiterate this. Genji, not to reiterate, just to make it clear just in the first place, a lot of Genji's power comes from his heroic, which again also ties in to Overwatch, where it's how he uses that Dragon Blade is a massive part. A lot of his power is tied into his heroic, and that heroic is inherently about AoE damage and the team fight. With Tracer, on the other hand, her heroic is there from level 1. It recharges quite quickly. So it's not this big team fight only heroic, and it's predominantly about single target burst damage. So that's another dynamic. Whereas Genji, okay, he's super mobile, but he's not as mobile as Tracer. There's more room to counterplay, quite a bit more room to counterplay Genji. And then on top of that, his big power spike comes from his heroic, which is inherently about the team fight and is more predictable. Whereas Tracer's is up very frequently at all different times and is about big single target damage and getting the kill. So it's a much more common thing really for just this Tracer to zip into your lane, pulse bomb you, smack you down with all this single target burst damage. You can't really escape from her, and she's focusing all these basic attacks into you. So yeah, that's kind of what I think about that. I do see Tracer as definitely the most problematic one. And also she was the first Overwatch hero to come to the game, so perhaps that did put a bit of a bad taste in people's mouth in terms of the Overwatch heroes. But for me, she is the most problematic one. And it's hard to see how do you get around it, really, isn't it? It's hard to see how do you get around it, because again, all these things, they come from Overwatch. That's fundamentally what the hero's about. I think the big issues is that you've got a different dynamic in terms of skill shots and how they work in the game, and also in terms of how supports and flanking works in the game. I think those two things make a very big difference when you bring Tracer over to this game as opposed to how she played in Overwatch, which does leave, I think, some problems in terms of game design and what's fun to play against, and you can often feel very helpless. And I think the Tassadar, the sort of secondary shielding hero issue going on top of Tracer, that's a very big deal as well in the game. Tassadar Tracer has been a huge pain in the ass to play against always, basically. Because again, it covers a lot of the issues, right, as well. Tracer's some of her weaknesses, much like Genji, not the best wave clear, but Tracer does have better wave clear, and especially level 13, she gets her AoE melee attack. Wave clear is pretty decent, actually, so that's not a huge deal. But you combo Tassadar with her, and then suddenly you've got Tassadar who can solo lane, and then you can have another damage dealing assassin that is also wave clear. So you got Tassadar doing wave clear in the solo lane, Tracer roaming the map, and then you got another assassin roaming with the 3-man team in that case, doing the wave clear. So that's not too bad. And Tassadar also brings good wave clear himself. So that kind of covers up some of Tracer's weaknesses there. So I think that is also a big issue in terms of game design. So it's not just a Tracer problem, it's also a Tassadar problem, which Blizzard's really struggled with. So yeah, there you go, guys. Those are my thoughts. Very long video today, but I hope you enjoyed. They're all my thoughts on the Overwatch heroes in the game. I'm very interested to see what sort of comments you guys have. I'll again go through the top comments, or probably pick out maybe some of the best comments, and go through those, do a response video, diving a bit more in depth and addressing some more specific concerns. But that's what I think about the Overwatch heroes. So yeah, on the whole, I'm not opposed to Overwatch heroes at all. I think actually, for the most part, most of them actually work really, really well and translate over, and I'm excited to see more of them. But I do think there are some problem heroes in terms of things that are just not super fun to play against. And let's say, for example, I think the Varian's parry build is particularly bad design as well, but I'd hope that Blizzard could change that, because they can. There's nothing stopping them from doing so. Whereas that is one issue with Overwatch, is that they can't, they can't go in and change Tracer, because Tracer is Tracer. That's what she's like in Overwatch. The point is that she's the same hero that she is in Overwatch. So they can't radically, change one of the fundamental aspects of how the hero plays. And that's just the way it's going to be. So yeah, curious to see what you guys think. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. I'll see you all next time for more Heroes of the Storm. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.